It's time for a brand new episode of the Bakery Bears video show.
This is our lifestyle show featuring craft, baking, and a little bit of history.
We've got lots of projects to show and one of our special series to share.
What will we feature this time, and which of our projects will be our favourite?
Let's get on with the show and find out.
Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring a huge reveal, The Secret, which we have been keeping for a couple of episodes maybe. Is finally going to be revealed to everyone, because in today's show we will be bringing to a close our first historical adventure series of the year.
Yeah.
And that's the first time we've ever said that, because we've never done more than one. So that's like huge in itself. But in the process of that episode coming to an end, we will of course be showing you a little bit. And I mean, it's hardly a trailer. It's just a...
No, it sort of is.
Oh, okay.
I think it is a trailer.
In that case, prepare yourselves.
But you'll find out where we were and where we're going to be.
Yes, because 2 or 3 weeks ago, we went to a place which I think I can say categorically is the greatest place that we've ever filmed.
Yeah, definitely.
'Cause every direction you looked, it looked great.
Yeah.
And that is where this new series is set. So we're super excited, to be honest, because it's been really quite the year for us with regards to the way that we approach these location filmings.
Yeah.
We spoke a little bit about this at the start of the year with Britain the Stately era, but we approach it exactly like a professional film studio now, because that's what we are, I suppose.
That's what we are.
But we went to York and we filmed the whole series, and that then opens up so many opportunities with regards to Britain the Stately era.
Yeah.
It's the first time we'd ever done it, though, so it really was like... But now we learnt so much from that first series. This second series was just the business.
Yeah.
We had so much fun.
We really did.
And we'll actually be talking
we really did.
all about the fun that we had in the radio show that comes out next week.
That's right.
So don't miss that.
Yeah.
But that's just the start of the excitement today, because, oh yes, Kay has got some cross-stitch to show you.
I do have some cross-stitch. It's very exciting. I've started a new cross-stitch, and yeah, I know I've already got one on the go that I started a while ago, but I was inspired to start something new, so that's really exciting.
It is super exciting. And not only that, I'm coming to the end of a rather epic project, and I'm really excited about it. So that's all to come later on in the show. And also, as well, Kay's got some really epic What's Off Your Needles.
I do.
Which is quite...
Really, really epic.
It's quite the achievement.
Yes.
Because we are in the midst of inspiration.
Yes, we are.
This is one of those... I love this. Since this became our job, it's funny, it probably happens once a year, I think.
Once a year.
Like full-on, like obsessed inspiration. And it's always in the process of developing a new design. I mean...
Yeah, something happened last week and I started working on something just completely on a whim. But it's something that I'd had in my head for about 3 years, I think. Must be about 3 years. And I'd always thought, I just don't know if I can get my head around that. I don't know if it's even possible, and all of these sorts of things. But for whatever reason, one afternoon, I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go and have a go at that.
Long-term viewers will know.
Yeah.
It's always the mornings when I get, like, blasted. It's like...
Pour down.
Don't say pour down. You know, you're literally just coming round and, like, reams of information comes at you with a cup of tea. Because that's when Kay gets inspiration.
Yeah,
but what happened was...
It is usually early morning.
This one morning, she said, I wonder if... And then carried on by saying something else.
Yeah.
And then that was, you know, when you light the old fuse on the firework.
And I was going to show it you this time, but it needs a bit more.
You're being sensible, aren't you?
I'm being sensible, and I sometimes get a bit carried away and a bit excited, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll show this on the show and I'll talk about it and it'll be so exciting. But because it's such a new thing, I've been doing a lot of work on it and a lot of swatching and a lot of working out and thinking and all of this. And I'm at the stage now of doing another official swatch, which I think will be what the actual thing will look like. But I want to work through another little swatch the whole way before I sort of plough in. But next time, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll be able to show you and talk about what it is that I'll be working on.
I think it's fair to say breaking new ground would be an excellent description.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely breaking new ground.
And that's always exciting, isn't it? And there's plenty of positives coming later on in the show in our pick of the projects.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Because my pick of the projects actually changed. I shocked myself.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know
Something happened.
Oh.
And, there was a realisation. And I'm so thrilled about it. It's so lovely.
I'm excited.
So you will see.
I didn't know.
You'll see the evidence, the new evidence. Yes, we're making a Channel 5 TV programme.
I absolutely love a programme that says new evidence.
I turn
whatever
those
it is.
off. Kay turns them on.
Whatever the subject is.
It's always rubbish.
I'm there.
Look,
new evidence of the pyramids.
Pick of the projects coming later on in the show. But before all of that, of course, I have to say the immortal words, the immortal Egyptian words. Oh yes, immortal Egypt. That was Joanne.
Oh, Joanne.
Joanne.
Joanne Fletcher. We love her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's time for me to say those immortal words. Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay, so the first of 3 new projects this time.
Wow.
I've got 3 new things on the go. So the first one I've put into, actually, because we're now in the, not officially summer, I mean the summer solstice is like the 21st of June, so we're almost at the summer solstice, aren't we? Probably by the time you watch this we will be. But I popped it into one of my bags that I made for Summer of Stitching. Was this the first Summer of Stitching?
So Summer of Stitching 2023.
Wow. So two years ago.
Yes, and we've had lots of people, we'll talk a little bit about Summer of Stitching later on the show, lots of people saying, oh, is it too late to join? All our events.
No.
So if you want to go and join the Summer Stitching 2023, go join it. Go do it. You can join anything, anytime you like. So there's never, too late, cut-offs, all of that. And we've just actually created on our Patreon page a 2023 Summer Stitching 2023 collection. So you can go to our Patreon page, click collections, and all of these are sat right there.
So what we did that year was I created this cross stitch, I designed this cross stitch, and we worked through this cross stitch together, and then we patchworked it into this lovely bag. These are all Liberty fabrics. This range is called Liberty Riviera, and you can still get it. So in this very summery bag, I have got a new pair of socks for Dan. I thought I'd start a new pair of DK weight socks.
Because they're excellent.
Because, have you got them on today? No, you had them on yesterday, I saw, and you wore them all that week that we were away. I did wash them.
All the filming.
I did wash them in between.
All the filming that was done for the series, which we will tell you all about later on today's show. I was wearing the same pair of socks. He was
wearing the socks I made. If you remember, a few weeks ago, I finished a pair of DK weight socks for Dan.
You made a bold statement.
Yes.
Greatest DK weight socks ever.
Yeah, and
they were correct.
They've been great. So I made them out of Drops Fiesta, and they've been brilliant. I've washed them in the machine. Oh, I don't know how many times now. Maybe 4 times, something like that. Because you've worn them a lot, haven't you?
Yeah.
And they've been absolutely brilliant. So I'm making him another pair, and I'm using Drops Fiesta again. So this time what I'm using, and it is funny because this is knitting up completely differently to the first colourway, but I'm going with it because Dan said he liked them.
Very much so.
What I'm using this time is Drops Fiesta again, and it's this colour and then this contrast. So the main colour is called Fairy Tale. It's number 22 and it's Fairy Tale, and it's like this mix of, it's like a speckly colourway with blues and purples and yellows and a bit of orange. It's really pretty, and I've just paired it with this neutral one. This is Drops Fiesta as well. This is colourway number 2. I'm not sure of the name of this, but it's just like this pale beigey sort of colour. So those are the yarns I'm using. I've got 2 50-gram balls. These come in 50-gram balls. So I've got 2 50-gram balls of the main colour and then 1 50-gram ball of the contrast. And this time well, let me show you the sock.
I must just say, what makes these socks so perfect is the stitch pattern, I think.
Yeah.
Because it just creates like a bit more of a grip, and it seems to like, hold on my foot really nicely. But then also as well, they don't feel warm.
Right.
They feel just like a nice temperature.
That's good.
And I like the squish factor.
Yeah, so this is where I'm up to on this one. And you can see, oh yes, you can see, it's doing a mad swirly thing. However, Dan said he liked it. When it comes to this kind of pooling business, I don't actually mind it too much if it swirls sort of like a swirly stripe. I don't mind that too much. What I don't like is when you get those like big blocks of colour. That's what I don't like. And if this had done that, I couldn't have dealt with that, I'm afraid. I would have had to have used a different yarn. But it's doing this sort of swirly thing. And of course, when I've done the gusset, it's changed. And I really like it, obviously. I really like it over the gusset. It just looks sort of speckled and nice. But inevitably, I'm sure it will go back to doing that swirly thing now I've finished the gusset decreases. But the colours are lovely. It's a really nice yarn to knit because there are so many colours in there. But what's happening with the swirliness is that the blues and purples are together and then the yellows and oranges are together. So it's producing this swirly business. But, I'm going with it because Dan likes them. It's a swirl, not a big lump, not a big pool, if you like, of colour. And also, I know that it's a great pair of socks and he will really wear them and enjoy them.
Well, I don't want any other socks. I just want DK weight ones.
If only that was true, that I didn't have to knit Dan fingering weight socks anymore.
I don't think you do right now.
Nice. No, and when I do, I think I'll be able to just knit you shorties because you only wear them in the summer.
I don't think you need to knit me any fingering weight socks this year or next year.
Oh my gosh.
There's a bold statement.
There is a bold statement. I can just work.
Mark it in your diaries now, folks.
I can just work my way through all of the Drops Fiesta yarn.
Yes.
I did buy a solid colour as well because I thought it might be nice to have a solid pair in like a teal blue, which I think would be really nice with the contrast. But I'm hoping this time, if you remember with the last pair, because I was worried I was going to run out of the main colour, I put in like 2 stripes of the contrast on the foot lower down. Now what I've done this time is the leg is just, I think it's one repeat in a row? It's something like 4 or 5 rounds shorter than the last one because I think that'll still be fine. And I did have a bit left of the main colour when I knit that other pair. So I'm hoping that I might be able to get, a whole sock out of the 50 grams because I'll do a contrast toe. If I do happen to run out by a round or 2, I'm just going to knit it in the contrast colour and it'll just look like the toe's a bit longer and that'll be fine, won't it? But we'll see what happens. If I think I'm going to run out, then I might stick a stripe in of the contrast, but we'll see. But this is a really large size. Ordinarily, even with a size large, I'm sure you would not run out having 100 grams of the main and 50 of the contrast. This is like an extra large size. This is 60 stitches for a DK weight. And usually I would say the biggest size of a DK weight might be 56 stitches. That medium size, which is equivalent to a fingering weight 64 stitches. With DK, it's usually 48. So the biggest size is usually somewhere around 52 or 56 stitches. So this is an extra large and it's 60 stitches. And the stitch pattern is a broken rib, but it's not like a a strict broken rib. It's very, just very slightly different. But it does, like Dan said, it does just give that extra bit of grip, if you like. Because I just didn't want to do a plain sock because I was worried it would go all baggy on his foot. But these haven't done that, have they?
No.
No. So I think that works really well. So I am working on a pattern for these, but it's for something specific. But it will appear at some point. That's all I want to say. I don't want to appear too mysterious. But I use whenever I make DK weight socks, I use a 3.25mm needle. And these actually are my favourite. I really love knitting this thickness of a sock with double points. You know, I'm not so keen on double points with fingering weight. I do knit them, you know, when the fancy takes me. But generally speaking, I prefer Magic Loop with fingering weight and DPNs with DK weight. There's just something about a bigger needle and a thicker yarn working on double points. I just really like the feel of that. And these ones are Chaogu bamboo needles, and they're excellent. I've just done a review of these actually. They are really, really good. I love them. And I like that they're paler coloured needles. I don't like needles in general that are dark in colour. Do you know, you see, like, for example, the Knit Pro Harmonies, Symphonies. I don't really like those because they're really dark, and for me, it restricts the colour of the yarn that you're working with. If you were working with a yarn that was darker, with a dark coloured needle, I just can't do it these days. Even when I was a bit younger and my eyes were a bit better, it still wouldn't have been my preference. I much prefer a light coloured needle, so metal or pale wood is my favourite. I don't know why they don't do more pale wood needles, because to get a pale wood coloured needle, if you like, is unusual, isn't it? Because like Knit Pro, there's the Harmonies one, which are like the rainbow coloured ones, Harmony Symphonies. And then they did that one that was blues and greens, but that was dark as well. And then also I've seen like dark wood coloured needles, but you don't often see pale wood coloured needles. And I like the Knit Pick Sunstruck. They are really pale coloured. And when I do use double points for a fingering weight sock, those are the ones that I use because they're a pale coloured needle, because I prefer wooden DPNs to metal. So Dan Jones, what's on your lovely needles?
Look at my jumper, it's the Godi, and I'm just like, oh, crumbs, maybe 5 or 6 rounds, and then I'll finish the top, and then it'll be onto the collar. And I'm changing the collar because it's a rolled collar on the Godi, and I don't like that. So I'm going to do the collar. I'm going to check the numbers, but the numbers for the rest of the jumper were the same. So I would guess that the numbers for the top will be the same. But to be honest, I've got a number of different ones I could go with because I've knitted a few and I like all the ones I've done so far. But my chosen collar, which I like the most, is the one from the Ridari. So I'll probably look to do the one from the Ridari, and I'll be doing it in the dark colour.
That's a good idea, actually, yeah.
So it's like blackish.
I can't believe this is not your pick of the projects. I'm really surprised. I know what the other one is, so I'm really surprised.
So this has been just wonderful, but I'm really excited to finish it, which is really cool because then I get to do another one, and that's really fun. But I'm also excited to finish it because I think a lot of the concern with finishing a project, and I would guess other people might be the same, finishing a project is the hardest bit because, you know, you have to do it right, otherwise you can mess it all up. And on a jumper, there's a lot to do, you know. There's under the sleeves and up the collar and even in the ends.
There is a lot of finishing, you're right.
And so, you know, I will enjoy every bit of that. I really will, because I know what I'm doing now. And
you do. You've done it a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, I absolutely have. And that's what I love. I love knowing what I'm doing. It's when I don't know what I'm doing that, you know, you've got the apprehension. And the apprehension's not there with this. So it is, of course, the Let Lopey, and the colours are all wonderful. Kay changed out one quite rightly. She put in the green.
I put in the green. Can you see that sort of soft, mossy green?
So much nicer.
Yeah, in the actual pattern, that was another shade of brown. And I didn't want another shade of brown, so I swapped it out for this green, and I think don't tell anyone, but I think it's better than the pattern. But look at that yoke, isn't it that amazing? It's so beautiful. They've done such a great job.
And look at all the tickets.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you all the colours. The main colour is something like brick heather or something. It's brick something, I think. They're all the same as the pattern, apart from the green. So you can find out what they all are. They don't have names on them, so it's impossible to...
So the main colour is 9431.
Oh, there you go, 9431. This lovely sort of rusty, well, brick red, I suppose, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's also 1707, 1417 and 1419.
There you go. Make a note of that and go and check it out.
All the colours.
They're all the colours. But isn't it amazing? This is just going to look so good on you. Hold it up, hold it up, hold it up.
Yeah, get ready for episode 2.
Look how good that looks.
Winter Walks 2025. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I should be wearing this. So that is the Godey, and it's marvellous. And the next time you see it, I think it might be finished.
Wow.
It's time for some cross stitch.
Yes, it is. Now, I don't know what inspired this. Well, I think I was just thinking about Bryony in her new university room that she's going into in September. And I was just thinking, oh, do you know what? I'd really like to make her something, I think, to put on the walls, because she can put things on the walls as long as it can be removed. So, you know, using the command hook tape business, you know what I mean? As long as you don't put nails in the wall, you can put things on the wall. So I thought, oh, it might be nice to do a really nice cross stitch that she can put on her wall. So I went looking for something, and I think what I was after was something that could just be there all the time and wasn't like, I didn't want to do something that was very autumnal, or do you know what I mean? I wanted to do something that she could just have there all the time and it would just look lovely all year round. And I went looking on... Now, did I go specific? I think I did specifically look on this website, and I've got other kits from this designer, from this maker, and I've started another one actually, and the kits are really good. And I saw this one, I thought, oh, I really want to do that. However, it's massive, so I'm amending it. But this is what I'm working on. So it's from littledovedesigns.co.uk, and it's called Little Dove's Year. And you can see it's a sampler, and there's 12 little squares, and each one represents a month. And it's just so lovely and cute, and I just thought it looked like it would be really lovely to stitch. And I looked at how big it was, and I thought, oh, that's quite big. I thought, well, I really want it. I really want to do it, so I'll get it. I realised when it came that it is really massive. Historically, when I used to do cross stitch years and years and years ago, so back in my 20s, I did do bigger pieces, and my mum has actually got all of those bigger pieces. And I used to do them on a frame. So I would attach them to a wooden frame, and then I'd clamp that to a stand, and I would stitch away, and it'd be lovely. But at the time, you know, I wasn't knitting at the time, and I didn't have any other hobbies, and I didn't have a child in the house. So it wasn't a problem that it took up a bit of space. But now, you know, with everything else that we've got, and I just didn't want to have this stand and the frame and this big thing, and I was like, where on earth would I put it? So I thought, well, I'll just do it in a hoop, and I'll move the hoop and it'll be fine. But even that was problematic for me because the fabric was so big that it was sort of difficult getting to the back, you know, because of all the fabric. And then I thought, hang on a minute, can I just sort of edit this design so that it's smaller, but still it gives the feel of what it is? And that's what I'm doing. So instead of doing 12 blocks for each of the months, I'm just doing 4 for each of the seasons. Within each of the little squares, it's got the name of the month written in each of the squares. So what I'm going to do, instead of putting the month, I'm going to put spring, summer, autumn, winter, because I can just use this. I'm sure I'll be able to get all of the letters that I need, you know, just by looking at the names of the month. And if I can't, I can just wing it a bit, but I'm sure that they'll all be there. So that's what I'm doing. So then it was fun because I had to choose 4 to represent spring, summer, autumn and winter. So I've done that and I've started it and I'm working on spring. So because mine's smaller, I could actually cut the fabric down that came with it. Now, I did start this by using a hoop. And I thought I'll just use a hoop and I'll move the hoop as I work around. But then I thought, do you know what? I'm going to try and find a I say hoop in inverted commas because it's actually squarish. I'm going to try and find one that's a bit bigger to see whether it would work for me, because I've never really tried that. And I'm using a serge hoop that I got from Caterpillar Cross Stitch, and it's square. It's a plastic one, and it's square, and it's pink. So you can imagine that swayed me. And it was the biggest one that they did in this sort of range. So I'll show you where I'm up to with the piece. My fabric does look quite creased because I did originally have it in a hoop, but that will sort itself out when I come to the framing. You know, I will deal with all of that. So this is where I'm up to, and this is the frame I'm using. So you can see I'm starting up here, and this one is spring. This one technically is May on the, you know, the full piece. This is May, but I thought this one represented spring really well. You can see we've got, little ducks. Can you see little ducks? And then mum over here, adorable. And then up here, there's a row of like plant pots with lovely flowers in. And then there's some more spring looking flowers to me down here. And then on the actual piece, it's got May written up here in between the flowers. Now, I don't know if there's going to be enough room to write spring there. So somehow I'm going to have to maybe edit it slightly, modify it slightly, maybe move the plant pots a little bit just to make a bit more space so I can put spring up there. But yeah, this is the first one, and it's really lovely to stitch. And this frame, I've got to say, it is really good. It took a bit of getting used to because it's larger. But what I tend to do is sort of rest it on my body, if you like. And then I have my hand kind of on the back, and then I just work, you know, back and forth, and it seems to be working out. And the good thing about this frame, did I say it was Nurge? N-U-R-G-E. Caterpillar Cross Stitch is where I got it. The fabric doesn't seem to move. Do you know, with a wooden hoop, I find I have to re-tighten it quite a lot. This doesn't seem to move. It was a bit tricky getting the fabric into it, I'll be honest. It was, you know, you had to really use a bit of force, and yeah, it was a little bit tricky, but you know, once it's in there, and I think I'll definitely have enough room to do summer here. And it's just whether I can quite get the corner of the other ones down here and here. But I think what I will do is I'll do as much as I can in the frame, and then I can just take it off the frame and just do it by hand. If it's just a little bit, I'll just finish it off holding it in my hand. I do know some cross stitchers. I think Jen, our editor, well, I've seen her cross stitch on her videos, and I've not seen her using a hoop. She just holds it in her hand, the fabric. And I've got a friend as well who holds it in her hand, fabric. And I've never really tried that. And I don't know, I've always been a bit like, would my stitches be as tidy? But the benefit of holding it in your hand is you don't need to sort of put your hand to the back all the time. You can kind of stitch in and out like that, can't you? I think that's the sort of theory of it. But I've never tried it. I mean, I might try it with just a little tiny piece and see how I get on doing that, because I can see the benefits of it. So yeah, I've started with May up here. The kits are lovely. It's really good quality. It's Zweigert fabric, which is my favourite. It's 14 count, this, which again, these days, I did used to stitch on 16 count many years ago, but now, you know, my eyes are not the best. I'm getting new glasses, actually. My prescription's changed, so that's exciting. But 14 count is what I really like. I can deal with that. It doesn't give me eye strain, you know, so it's all fine. But yeah, it's Zweigert fabric, it's DMC threads, and they all come pre-sorted like this. You know, they're all on the card, pre-sorted. The charts are lovely. They're colour, so they're colour and the symbol on top of the colour. So that's perfect. And what's really good about this one is you get each of these individual little designs are all on a separate sheet. So that's brilliant. Because what I think I'm going to do, so I didn't tell you actually which ones I was doing for which month. So for spring, I'm doing May. For summer, I'm doing August. It's like a beach scene with a beach hut. Autumn, I'm doing the October one, which although it looks Halloween-y, that's the one I know Bryony would want for autumn. And then for winter, I'm doing January because it's all snowy and lovely. What I'm also going to do you see the one for Christmas? December. I just think it's so lovely. I'm going to do that one individually and maybe patchwork it into a bag. Bryony looked at this and she really liked the one for July. It's got bees on and sunflowers. So I said to her, well, you could take that chart for July. I could give you the chart. I could sort you out a piece of fabric. I've got all the threads here so I could pick out the relevant ones, and she could stitch that one as a separate little piece. So although this is a really big sampler, I think if you're not up for a big sampler, there's ways of adapting it. You could just decide to do them all individually, couldn't you? And either frame them or make them into something else like a bag or a cushion or whatever. So yeah, really lovely kit, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm trying to do a little bit every evening just so that I am working on it. But really enjoying it.
And if you want to take up cross stitch, go and have a look at the 2023 Summer of Stitching.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because Kay is an expert cross stitcher. She's been doing it for decades.
True, yeah.
And she developed a course, and it's all part of that Summer of Stitching which we mentioned earlier on in the show. Back in February, we started telling the story of the British country house. That cataclysmic change was forced on the country by the upheaval of Oliver Cromwell's Republic. But now Oliver Cromwell is dead, and the country is really floundering. There's only one man who can save us. It's time for the return of the king in the final episode of Britain, the Stately Era.
Welcome to modern Britain. These are scenes many of us will know all too well. The question is, how did we get here?
Society did not arrive here by chance. If we look back through history, we can pinpoint moments where decisions were made, often by the smallest demographic of people, that led us to a point where the modern world would thrive.
King Alfred the Great defeated the Vikings in the 9th century. The castle's arrival in the 11th century. The dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century.
But there's just one event that set Britain on course to where she stands today.
That event brought about the birth of modern journalism. It inspired the construction of a navy which would in time deliver an empire, but also win a world war. And most importantly, it gave the country a government and a monarchy which remains to this day.
But it starts at a time when we had no monarchy at all. This is the story of the English Republic, an earth-shattering period in history which saw the end of the castle and the end of all powerful kings and queens. This was the first chapter of the modern world that we all now live in, and it was set against an architectural revolution, one that would deliver the homes that the new people in charge would live in. Welcome to Britain, the Stately Era. Welcome back everyone to Minster Gardens in York. This was a place once known well by Thomas Fairfax, who we first met in episode 1, and he'll actually be making another reappearance in our story today. Now last time, we visited an absolutely gorgeous townhouse that was built for his great nephew, and my goodness, we learnt some pretty spectacular things, didn't we?
On our trip to Fairfax House, we met the distant relatives of Thomas Fairfax, who owned this house in its heyday. We toured the saloon, dining room and kitchens as we saw the type of home that would transform the towns and cities of Britain. We concluded the story of Oliver Cromwell with his death and the end of his military rule, and we saw Britain on the brink with Scottish MPs ejected from Parliament. Today, we will tell the story of George and Anne Monk, the couple whose passion for their country delivered a stable government once again. We'll see the son of Charles I return to his country of birth in triumph as the British monarchy returns. And we will visit every destination of this spectacular series once more to see how the return of the king affected their story.
We start today on York's historic walls. Many people actually think they're Roman. They're actually not. In 866 AD, the Vikings invaded and they covered the Roman walls with an earthen bank and they put wooden stakes on top. In 1250 AD, these walls that we see here, they were put up and they replaced that Viking wooden palisade. Why we're here? Because the walls play a key part in today's story.
When I left you last time, Britain was on the edge of total disaster. Whilst the Civil War had brought about the end of a monarchy, the country that was born afterward was still one man's kingdom. Driven by a huge personality, Oliver Cromwell had ruled with puritanical ruthlessness, with no thought for the future. On his deathbed, he named his son's successor, a man completely ill-equipped for the job of replacing him.
He was quickly forced to resign. The army had once again taken control of the government. In this moment of total disaster, there was only one man who had the power to stand up to Westminster. His name was George Monk, and he was about as far away from the action as you could possibly imagine, sat in a barracks in the uplands of Scotland.
George and his wife Anne lived in Scotland due to his role as military commander there. His intention had been to retire from service and had even written his resignation letter. But then the military took control of Westminster. George and Anne were both believers in an elected parliament, and whilst they didn't want to get involved, they thought they must. George and Anne discussed everything, and in his position as leader of the military in Scotland, George felt there was a chance he could shape the future of the whole country. Anne felt sure he was right, and she encouraged him to follow his convictions. So he wrote to the leaders of the new model army who now controlled Parliament and informed them they must stand down and let the elected politicians lead. Whilst he had enough men under his control in Scotland to make the military leaders in Westminster pause, he did not have enough to win an actual battle. His only hope was to bring together all the people who hated the government Cromwell had created. Only with immense skill and an iron nerve could he hope to prevail. As George and Anne prepared to make their move, Anne had a dream. She saw a great hill surrounded by a ring of strong men. On top of the hill was a golden crown. A man she could not make out broke through the ring of men and grabbed the crown. What this meant and who the figure was she couldn't say. But this dream inspired her and George in all that was to follow. George's first act was to sack any officers who reported to him who he didn't trust. In their place, he put strong, loyal men. He moved carefully, consulting with his men regularly. Westminster sent a force of 12,000 to deal with George and his 8,000 men. If a pitched battle ensued, he would most certainly lose. Hope came that November in the form of a letter from the only man with the sheer celebrity to turn the tide. The founding father of the new model army, Thomas Fairfax himself.
For almost a decade, Thomas had lived in retirement on his family estate about a mile from here. Whilst his old deputy Oliver Cromwell was in power, he'd kept his distance. But now, as the country stood on a precipice once again, Thomas was not going to stand by.
Thomas had never wanted the old king executed, and for 10 years he'd stewed here on his family's ancestral land for not standing up for what he believed in. He would not make that mistake again.
With a vast army now bearing down on him in Scotland, George Monk wrote to Thomas Fairfax here in North Yorkshire asking him for help. Fairfax agreed on the promise that if they were successful, an independent government would be installed in Britain who would decide how they would be ruled in future themselves. George Monk agreed.
Thomas now needed to get a message to George Monk fast, and the only way to do that was with a willing courier. It was Christmas 1659, and Thomas's eye fell on his young nephew Brian, visiting for the seasonal festivities after his term had ended at Cambridge. He was immediately dispatched on the most perilous of journeys on horseback in the deepest of winter. Delirious with exhaustion, Brian finally arrived in Scotland on Christmas Day, and he handed his letter directly to George Monk. George was thrilled. Thomas Fairfax would muster his men on New Year's Day in the hope the Westminster army en route to Scotland would turn to face them instead. But whatever happened, George Monk and Thomas Fairfax would attack the hostile force from both sides.
It must have been a really tense Christmas in the Fairfax and Monk household that year. No one had a clue how their grand plan would play out. But as New Year's Day dawned, Thomas Fairfax mustered 2,000 men, and he made his way right here to the ceremonial entrance to the city of York. This is Micklegate Bar.
For everything that follows to seem wondrous, you have to remember that Thomas Fairfax was the general who led the country to victory in the English Civil War, which brought about the end of the monarchy. He'd barely been seen in 10 years, then suddenly, here he is at the gates to one of the most important cities in the country. Once he had been sighted, his agents started ringing the bells of York Minster. It was a prearranged signal for the citizens to rise up and overwhelm their military governor. As the great general rode through the gates and on into the city, it was clear their plan had worked. The new model army, faced by their greatest general ever, never even put up a fight.
Brian Fairfax was here. What a Christmas he had had. And he watched his uncle spellbound as he approached the closed city walls.
He wrote afterward, it was like looking at another man, his motions so quick, his eyes sparkling, giving words of command like a general. You can only imagine what the parliamentary soldiers must have thought who were looking down from the top of the gatehouse.
The soldiers manning the wall were clearly in awe, because as Thomas Fairfax approached Micklegate Bar just down there below us now, the gates were closed, but as he got close to the wall, they opened them up and they welcomed him into the city like a conquering hero.
Far away in Scotland, word spread quickly of the return of Thomas Fairfax. The path to London opened up completely to George Monk, his vast army, and of course his wife Anne. As they made their way through the country, their journey felt like a royal progress. People turned out everywhere to cheer them as they passed on their way to London.
Ever the gentleman, George Monk had arranged for his wife Anne to travel on ahead of him to London. And when she arrived, her reputation as his closest confidant had travelled ahead of her.
Those who wished to seek favour and size up the general's intentions came to Anne's door. She was inundated with requests for meetings. She welcomed them all with astounding humility, serving them wine and cake and reiterating her husband's commitment to the Republic.
It was a masterstroke. If George had arrived first in London with his huge army, it could potentially have triggered violence. But Anne instead had got there, and she paved the way for what everyone hoped would be a peaceful entrance into the city. This was the moment, the fork in the road, that would either bring us to the world we know today or to another civil war and potential oblivion. What would happen? We're going to find out in part 2. So thank you so much for watching so far, and I'll see you later on in the show with more Britain, the stately era.
Yes! That, for me, is one of the most exciting stories in British history, and I did not know it until researching this series. Kay, when she used to visit York, and I, when I used to visit York, long before we met, we used to park in a car park just round the corner from that gateway where all of that just happened. So without those events, and, you know, to think, last episode we went and visited Fairfax House, which is part of the Fairfax family and a relative of Thomas Fairfax. It all, like, comes together in York. And I just didn't realise that the country that we live in today is thanks to pretty much those events. Now, the funny thing is the story's not over, because George and Anne Monk are, like, doing the business and are championing all of this. And the king is not back yet. So that's all to come in part 2. But the bit that I love about that story is imagine, right? Because we can imagine it now with Bryony, you know. Brian's at university, she's come home. Imagine it's Christmas. Imagine you're Brian Fairfax and you're at Cambridge and you come home for Christmas and suddenly you get sent on, like, a death-defying horse ride to Scotland, where if you get found, you're going to get hung. And then I love the fact that then Brian is, like, you know, at the gates watching his uncle ride through the gates, like saving. I mean, it just is so epic. And, you know, to be there, and actually Bryony did all of that filming. So all of that filming around Micklegate Bar was all done by Bryony, and it was just so fun. So fun.
She helped out, didn't she? Yeah, she was
but
cool.
Of course, so you can see I'm getting too excited now. The good stuff is all to come in part 2, because in part 2 we revisit all the houses from
Yeah.
the series, and we take a look at some of the rooms which we've not covered yet. We also talk a little bit about the gardens and how gardens became what they became. So there's still so much to come. And then, of course, the big reveal. Yes, we find out what on earth is happening next.
Is anybody fast forwarding
What do you
Right.
mean? Oh,
to the video to find out?
I hope not, because there's two outstanding. Oh no, pick of the projects.
Pick of the projects first.
So without further ado, it's time for the pick of the projects.
I can't even say
Go on
it.
then, try again.
Do we say, Dan Jones, what's your pick of the project?
We do
no,
not.
we don't say that.
No.
We're not making that a thing. It's too many words
There's
for
way
me
too
to
many
say.
words.
Yes.
We just say it's the pick of the projects.
Yay!
Yeah, baby.
I can't believe this is your pick of the projects. I'm excited
So-
to find out why.
Yesterday, what happened was we were filming the projects for today's show. And we laid out the projects, and we were looking at the projects, and Kay laid out this pair of socks. And for the first time ever in my history of knitting socks, I looked down at the socks and I thought, do you know what? They look pretty good. And I just thought, I mean, because I am married to Kay, I know all of my faults. And that's not because Kay's pointing them out. It's because she's like obsessed with socks. And so you know all the problem areas. So I know the areas where I need to get better. But when you take a step back and you look at them like you just did, you'd be pretty pleased with those.
You would.
And I just was. For the first time ever, I thought, do you know what? This has been fun. I really enjoyed it. And this is my pick of the projects. Because
Yay.
it is like surprised. It just surprised me. Because I didn't anticipate socks ever being something that I would look at and go, yes, do you know what? I'm relatively pleased with that. Now, the problem is now Kay starts going over all the bits and, oh, he could have done that better and this could have been better.
Not doing that.
And that's the thing which sometimes you have to look past. Because if something's a challenge for you and you've got it to a point where you're actually, you know, you're producing something which you'd happily put on your feet and go, yes, that's okay. That's then something you can build off. And, you know, I think that getting to this point is a really good thing because it probably does mean I can build off that. And because the other thing I've started to do is I've started to understand more of the theories behind some of the techniques. So I know that in certain areas, if I adopt this technique, which conveniently I may have filmed Kay doing a tutorial for, then, and you know, that's the other great thing, you know, I get to see all these things, and it's only when you get to a point of understanding that you can sort of go, right, that is applicable for this. And I feel like I'm getting to that point with them. So I'm looking forward to
It's
the
a
next pair of
perfectly
socks.
lovely wearable pair of socks. It almost finished. This is the Snow Forest pattern, isn't it?
It is.
Which was from, gosh, when did I do this one?
Oh, it's a while ago.
2020. Oh, 2020.
And this is the yarn from the first episode of...
It is.
Yeah.
This yarn is... Do you have the shoe books?
Oh, come on.
Isn't it pretty?
It's gorgeous.
It's really lovely. You know,
Yeah.
if you like these sort of subtle colours, it's a really nice one. So it has a panel, a lace panel down each side of the sock. The pattern actually has a different heel. It's called Snow Forest, and it has, it's an afterthought heel actually with the actual pattern. So I mean, that's interesting. If you've ever wanted to give an afterthought heel a try, that's a picture of it from the pattern. There is a video tutorial in there, but they're looking lovely, and they're nearly finished as well.
Yeah, I know.
You're going to have to start a load of new projects.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean...
You have to find you a new sock
I feel
pattern.
like, well, yeah, we've probably got a good idea as to what I would probably do next. I think we spoke about it a few episodes ago.
Right.
But I'm using... These are Chagu needles, aren't they?
Chagu, yeah.
Yes.
2.5 mil.
And they're really great.
Yeah,
You know,
the metal ones, they are lovely needles.
They're not too slippy.
No.
They're sort of the perfect amount of grip.
Yeah.
And also, you know, if you... with the wooden needles... I tried them once and I snapped them.
Yeah, you did.
And I think I probably would do again because I'm quite strong in my hands. And whilst my gauge might not be as tight as it was,
No, it's not.
My hand movements. That's what got it before. It wasn't the gauge. It was.
Yeah.
It was this.
It was. Yeah.
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 And so half the battle I think with anything is using the right tools.
Yeah.
And it was a long progress in getting to the right tools with me for this, because I obviously did them on the magic loop, and I didn't like that.
You hated that.
I did, and then I did on the wooden ones, and I didn't enjoy that because they were too grippy, but I broke them anyway, and then tried the square ones, and whilst the square ones worked, they were too slippy, so I was always dropping needles off the end. And it's funny that, because you would have thought with them being square that it wouldn't have dropped off so easily.
They were very slippy, weren't they?
Yeah.
It was strange.
It was like, what do I use? And, obviously she's used so many different needles. She's like, well, give these a go. And honestly...
You really like
just
them.
not look
I
back.
do like them. If I'm ever going to use metal double points, it would be the Chowgoo ones, because the surface is like a brushed surface rather than that super shiny, highly polished.
It makes them a real joy to hold.
Yeah.
And the other thing is as well, you often say, I think you just said it yesterday, that your hands smell of metal.
Yeah.
These do not smell.
No. I have had some needles, some Addy needles that really smell metally.
You don't want that, do you?
No, and you come away and your hands really smell of metal. Yeah. It's highly unpleasant.
It is. It's really unpleasant. So
there'll be a nice chunk of this left for me, for leftovers, for something. Woohoo! I love leftovers.
Highly recommend the needles, but also the pattern, and it's maybe been good for me doing a pattern where there had been more plain knitting on it. I mean, I'd like my next one to have maybe slightly more going on, but actually,
we'll find something
just
for you.
all in all, looking back on the project as a whole, feel like I've learnt a lot again from it, and also it's been great to finally knit a pair of socks and think, do you know what, that's all right.
They're very good, and I was just looking at your gauge actually. These are 2.5mm, and I reckon, I haven't got a tape measure to hand, but I think your gauge is about 8 stitches to the inch on 2.5mm, and mine, I tend to use 2.5mm for my sock knitting these days. My gauge is about 8.5, maybe a smidge more to the inch, using 2.5mm. So I'm actually tighter than you now with socks.
Yeah.
But I know some people like knitting socks to a really tight gauge, like 9 or even 10 stitches to the inch. That's too tight for me. I think they're a lovely pair of socks. I think you've done a brilliant job.
Cool. What's your pick of the projects?
Right, so mine is something completely new and different. Remove those sock blockers out of the way because it's not a pair of socks. This is something, again, for a while that I've wanted to give a go to. And I just suddenly thought, do you know what, I'd cast off a few things, I'd finished a few things, I thought, right, do you know what, I'm gonna start that project, because it needed a bit of thinking about and a bit of working out. So it just took it wasn't like I could just pick up the needles and cast it on. I had to do a bit of calculation before I could. But I did that and started it. So I'm actually knitting a cowl, because what I decided, I thought, what is it I really love knitting? Because sometimes I think it's easy, isn't it, to just think, what do I maybe need to knit? I know that's not the case for most people, because knitting is a hobby, so I guess you don't need to knit anything. But for me, where it's a hobby but it's also my work, very often there'll be things that I do need to knit, and I don't have that luxury very often of thinking, what do I actually want to knit? If I could just knit anything. And one of my most favourite things to knit and to design, if you like, are cowls. And because I love to wear them as well. I really like to make things that are going to be useful and that I know are either going to be used in the home, if it's blankets or whatever, or that it's going to be worn. And I wear cowls all the time. Not right now, because it's going to be boiling this week, but even non-seasonally, I wear cowls in the morning, to snuggle up in my pyjamas and all of that. So I really, really love cowls, and I find them a really useful item. You don't have to fuss with them. Scarves are a bit like you have to mess and they move. Cowls, you put them on, keep your neck warm, lovely. I'm making a cowl. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to see whether I could make a cowl using my fairground pattern. So that's what I'm doing, and it's working out absolutely lovely. So I needed some yarns to do this, obviously. And what I wanted was a solid yarn to sort of alternate through to produce the stripes, because to show off the fairground pattern there needs to be some stripes going on. And so I thought, right, I need a solid colour, or a single colour, let's say, and then I need a bunch of minis, if you like. And I suddenly remembered I'd got the 2 clubs from Pixie Yarn, and there's 6 in each of those, so I'd got 12 yarns, and I thought, well, that's a nice number. It's a gradient. That's very nice. Have I got a yarn that I could use as the contrast that would go well with all of these colours? Yes, I do. And guess what? It was the yarn I dyed up for my birthday this year. So it was like alchemy. It all worked out. So let me take that yarn out. So the yarns I'm using from Pixie Yarn, these are the ones I've sort of got left. It's the first 2 of her club this year, which is called Roots. This was the first one, which came out in the spring, I think, sometime. This is the remainder of the second one, and then the third's coming out in September, and the 4th is November. But I had 12 minis, and it's a gradient, so those are what I'm using. And the contrast yarn is this pink that I dyed up for my birthday. It's just a really gorgeous kind of marshmallowy pink, and it's got teeny tiny little speckles of, the colour is Dusk from Landscape Dyes. That's the speckling colour. So I thought that will be perfect. It will go, try not to rattle, it will go with all of these colours so lovely. And I've started it. I'm on the 3rd colour of the minis, and this is how it's looking. Isn't it lovely? And aren't those greens just gorgeous? I love those greens. So the colour I'm on now it's a deep green, but it's got hints of the kind of pinkish red that's coming in, because the next one along, purpley pinky red colour. And it's just working out so lovely. I've done a garter rib, a 2x2 garter rib, because I thought that was really pretty. Because when I knit cowls, I like to have a rib at the bottom, otherwise it curls. But I don't like the rib to suck in, because I want it to be fairly straight down the edges. So what I always do is I use some kind of a broken rib or modified rib or something, so that it doesn't suck in. And a garter rib doesn't really do that, because those bands of garter stop it from really sucking in. And once you block it as well, it just stays perfectly square to the edges. And it's just looking so lovely. So I'm using my fairground pattern, which comes from the fairground socks. And then I just, I did a bit of maths to work out how many stitches I needed to cast on using the pattern that I wanted to, because in the fairground socks, there's 3 charts. There's a small, a medium and a large. And each one is slightly modified to fit the stitch count of the socks. So I thought, which one of those 3 do I want to use? And then I know how many stitches I like to cast on for a fingering weight cowl, and I just got as close to that as I could, using multiples that were relevant to the stitch pattern. And I think it's looking absolutely lovely. I'm really enjoying it. And it's really nice. If you know the fairground socks, you'll know how the pattern works. So it's really nice because I can whip through a few rounds of plain knitting, and then I get to do a bit of patterning. And then you whip through another few rounds. So it's really, it's really easy to get through a pattern repeat quite quickly, even though it's quite high stitch count. I decided to do like broad stripes of the colour, because I really wanted to show off those colours. And then just a thin stripe of the pink in between. I think it's just looking so pretty. Bryony said she saw this on my lap when she came into the room yesterday, and she said, it looks a bit like a garden.
And I said something similar, actually, didn't I?
Did you? What did you say?
I said it looked quite florally.
Oh, right.
And I think it's the green and the pink.
Green and the pink. Yeah, green and pink's lovely, isn't it, together?
It's a really funny colour, actually, I think, pink, because too much of it, and I think it can be...
overpowering.
Yeah, and in a way even slightly bland. But then, actually, if you put other colours with it, it makes it really pop.
Yeah, it does. And I'm using about, this is that first green. I love this one. It's like a sort of mossy pond green. I love this shade of green. And I'm using about 8 grams of the 20 grams for each stripe. So it would work with a 10 gram mini as well, which I think is nice. And I'll have loads left over. So I'm just going to, when I've finished this, I'm just going to put all these into a bag and I'll have loads left over, about 12 grams. So there's plenty to do either scrappy socks or whatever I want, really. So that's really nice. So the one I'm knitting now is this one, if you can see the greeny shade here. And then I'll be moving into this sort of deep purplish shade afterwards. And then it goes out into those sort of pinky reds, into like a rusty orangey brown, and then into like a very pale creamish shade. I suppose this last colour might not be a huge contrast with the pink, but I think it's enough of a contrast because this will be right at the other end of the cowl. I think it's enough of a contrast that it will show up.
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it looks sort of nice, to be honest.
Yeah, and if it works out, then, there's thoughts that I might release this as a design at some point, because I think it's nice. It uses 12 minis plus a solid. And I know that some advent calendars you get 12 of something, don't you? Or it might be that you've got leftovers from another advent calendar where you've only used half of the 20 grams. So it would work for that as well. So yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. I'm using 3.25mm, and this is just it's a hat circular size 16-inch, which works really well for cowls for me.
And they're Chago needles?
No, these are Knit Pro Novas.
Do they smell metally?
No.
Right.
They don't. I think it's just Addies that I seem to have a problem with that smell metally.
Well, it's not just you, because I know what you mean. I've smelled the same thing too, and it makes you wonder about what the metal is and the quality of the
it's
casting.
got to be because a lot of them are coated, aren't they?
Right. So maybe it's coating of some sort.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes with the Addies, certain Addies as well, it can wear off and it can look like a sort of brassy colour underneath. Right. So it's got to be that coating, hasn't it? Or is it the under metal that smells? I don't know. So, but these are lovely. I always use Knit Pro Novas for cowls.
How long will that be then when you finish, do you think?
It'll be as long as... I like cowls to be quite long, so I've done it to be about the same length as my Philosopher's Cowl, which is one of my favourites. I suppose if I show you, it might be like this. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I do quite like them quite long, because then they sort of bunch up around your neck here and you get a really nice bit of warmth.
Yeah.
So I think it should be really lovely. I'm hoping it'll be a favourite when it's finished.
I think the sort of lacy elements. That's right. I'm using the right.
There's eyelets there, so it is a sort of lacy.
The lacy elements make it look like, because you can see like bits of light coming through, so it's like it.
Yeah, because it's eyelets.
Yeah, and that makes it pop even more. I think the colours. They really are lovely colours, those, aren't they?
The Pixie yarns are absolutely beautiful colours. It's Sophie. She's a very good dyer. Whenever I'm using Sophie's yarns, I'm like, gosh, she is a really good dyer, and she's done a brilliant job with this gradient, I think. Some of them are very, very close. Like these two here, I think are really close, and there could be a bit more contrast, I think, between these. And then I think these to the beginning and the next one are very close as well. But I think because I'm going to have that little stripe in between, it'll be fine. And I'm sure once I start knitting, I might find that there's more of a difference. Sometimes it's difficult to tell in the mini, isn't it? And you've got to really get knitting to see how it's going to work up. But yeah, Fairground Cowl, and I'll put it in my bag that I made with Fairground things on. I made this when I was designing the socks. It's a thicker weight fabric, this. I can't remember what the brand is, but it's that kind of medium weight, like fabric that is sort of like an upholstery type fabric, but not curtain fabric, not that thick. But it's really nice sturdy fabric. Yeah.
Cool. So that's our pick of the projects. My goodness, there's been some corkers.
Yeah.
It's so exciting, because there's 2 amazing projects to take a look at, and an ancient pair of socks too.
Oh, yes.
So without further ado, I shall say, Kate Jones, what's off your needles?
Okay, so the first thing off my needles is a pair of socks. But before I show you the actual socks, I want to show you these cute little socks, because I was tidying out all of Bryony's socks. She uses those IKEA cube things, but they were just all shoved in there in a mountain. So I was like, I'm going to take them all out. I will organise them all. I will wash all the ones that need washing. So I did all that. And during the course of that, for some reason, in her pile, Bryony had a pair of socks, which was the first pair of socks I ever knitted. So I knit these in 2012. So Bryony would have been 7 at the time. And it's these ones, and they're so sweet. She didn't wear them for very long because she just grew out of them. But look at these cute little socks. And amazingly, it's a ribbed sock. Can you believe the first pair of socks I ever made was a fully ribbed sock? It's a Kate Atherley pattern. I think it's something like fully ribbed sock or something. I'm sure it's Kate Atherley. It's a 3x1 rib, and I knit these using Malabrigo sock. Can you believe I did that? It shows you what did I know back then, because there's no nylon in Malabrigo sock, and the colour was something like blue-green or something.
The farrow and ball colour?
Oh, I know. We were talking about paint colours recently. We're repainting our downstairs kitchen hallway, right? And I must have ordered a bazillion different sample pots. It's quite hilarious. And we've eventually decided on the first colour that I tried.
It's always the same.
But during the course of that, we were talking about colour names, and it's farrow and ball that we like to use. And the colour here that you can see behind us, it's a farrow and ball, and it's just called blue-green or green-blue. But their colours all have like really cool names, don't they? And then you get green-blue. So Dan was like, oh, somebody must have been really tired at the end of the day when they named that colour. What should we call it? Oh, I want to go home. Green-blue will do.
Well, it's 450. It was 450, and they sat down and looked at that colour, and they didn't stop and ponder and say, we'll call that one scallop, and we'll say, is it perhaps inspired by the shape of the shell?
How funny is that? So I did get a sample pot of a colour called scallop, or scallop, however you want to say it. And it sort of got a hint of pink in it. And I thought, I don't even know if I want to do that in the kitchen. But anyway, I thought I'll try it. And on the inspiration, it did say, inspired by the colour and shape of scallop shells. And I'm like,
how can a colour be inspired by a shape?
How can a colour be inspired by a shape? The one we've gone for is Mizzle, if you're interested. So that's the colour we'll be painting our hallway and kitchen will be Mizzle. But yeah, this is the first pair. I didn't do a bad job. It's pretty good. The gusset pickup's a bit dodgy, and my decreases went a bit wobbly down the side there. I didn't do a bad job at all, so I wanted to show you those because I thought that was really cute, and it's nice to have that record, isn't it? I would never get rid of these because it's just that record of the first thing you ever did, of that thing that is now a huge part of your life and that you love, and do you know what I mean?
So that's your first socks.
So my most recent socks are this pair.
Gosh.
These are called the Wonder Socks. These are now in test knitting. And they're called the Wonder Socks because when I was knitting this pair in particular, all I could see here was the Wonder Woman symbol. But also the word just fits them because they were a wonder for me. It was like, can I do this? Can I create this? Fingers crossed I have. They're in test knitting, so they are a bit of a wonder. And I just thought it was a really cool name. So for these, I used Freckled Whimsy. It was a sock set from her Halloween club, which she ran last year and into the beginning of this year. And this one was the February one, and it was called Happy Pink Oween. And they're just absolutely perfect. So yeah, these are now in test knitting. Now, I've got a high number of test knitters for these. Usually when I'm doing test knits for socks, I will just have one person per size. But with these, because they're very specific and this stitch pattern is notorious for kind of pulling the fabric in, even though I've modified it, and I think it's less so, much less so than a kind of standard way of working these chevrons. I just wanted to make sure that I'd had loads of people test knitting it and that I'd done as much as I can really in terms of checking to make sure that you do get a good fit. So it's only just gone into test knitting. I've had one person give me feedback to say that, you know, that she'd knit through a whole sock and it fit great, but she did go up a needle size. So I'm guessing that might be what most knitters will have to do. I have put notes in the pattern regarding the gauge, just saying, look, you've really got to watch your gauge. If it's tighter than mine, you're going to have to go up a needle size. You know, it's not that kind of a pattern where I think a lot of times if you are a experienced sock knitter, you will know what your gauge is. And generally speaking, I would say most people would use a 2.25mm to knit socks. That's a generalisation, but that's my kind of feel that I get. I use 2.5mm for these, and they've come out fine. They fit me really well. They fit Bryony really well. I think if you normally use a 2.25mm, you would need to go up to a 2.5mm. But it really just depends on your gauge. It may be that if I add extra notes into the pattern just to make sure that people are being aware and that they use the right needle size. You know, there's just lots of thoughts going on in my head. So at the moment, usually I'm certain that a pattern is going to come out, you know, as a paid for pattern. I'm not 100% certain with this until I've gone through all of that process of test knitting. So I think I've got about 15 test knitters altogether for these socks. So there'll be a lot of work involved in just dealing with all of the feedback and getting all the feedback and all of that. So we'll see how it goes and I'll keep you posted. But I really love them. I think it's a great pattern. And like I say, at the end of the day, worst case, I don't decide to release these as a pattern, I've still got a lovely pair of socks for Bryony. It's a process. Sometimes that process takes longer, might need modifying, and sometimes it doesn't work out. So I just want to sort of put it out there that it's not 100% that this one will be coming out, but I really, really hope everything works out for it. So the second of my needles is, I finished my advent blanket. I can't remember when I started this. It was earlier this year and it's only June now, so it really hasn't taken me that long to knit this. And I finished it. So let me show you the finished blanket first. So I started with the corner with this deep red and then worked across to the centre, which is this centre stripe, which is this pale coloured one. And then decreased back down to this lovely deep blue. I love these blues. They're just gorgeous. This is my own pattern. And I used a advent calendar from Beehive Yarns, which was the one from last year that was called the Bookish Advent Calendar. And I held yarn double, so its fingering weight held double. And what I did with regards to the minis was, because it was a gradient, I held yarns 1 and 2 together, 3 and 4 together, 5 and 6 together, and so on. And that worked out beautifully because you got lots of tones within the colours. This middle section I know is very pale. I'm not happy with the contrast colour I used. That's one of my issues with this. And then all the way back down. To increase and decrease, I used a method that is common to use in hat blankets. And then I modified it going down the decreases because I wasn't keen on how it looked on the edge. So I did some modifications and I really like that. I added in a drop stitch round. Here you can see every certain number of rows. So it's finished and it's beautiful and I love it. However, I ran out of the mini coloured yarn twice, I think. And I had to go searching for like a little matching yarn. It was literally a tiny little bit. And then this deep blue one, I've never played yarn chicken like it in my life. I had this much yarn left. It was terrifying. And also the contrast yarn, I had to break into a third skein for 20 stitches. I ran out and I've got 20 stitches left. So I literally had to wind a whole skein of yarn for 20 stitches. So there's, whilst I thought, oh, maybe I'll release this as a pattern, there's issues with it that at the moment I would have to resolve. With regards to the contrast yarn, I would just probably work one stripe less in each of these sections and that would sort out the yarn requirements because I can't put out a pattern where you need to break into a third skein for 20 stitches. That's just, that wouldn't sit comfortably with me. And then also the fact that I ran out It was only on the decrease sections, actually, and it was only twice. It was weird. I mean, it could have been that my tension might have been just slightly different at that point. But I really like how it's come out. But for now, I think it's just going to remain a blanket that I've knitted, you know, that I really like. I would have to do quite a lot of work on the pattern. Plus, I don't like this pale section in the middle. I wish I'd used a different contrast colour. So if I was going to put this out as a design, I'd need to knit another one, is what I'm saying. And I don't have yarns available to do that. I'd need another gradient set of minis, and, you know, there's lots of things I need to tweak about it. So, but, you know, I've got a really lovely blanket. It's a really nice size, lovely lap blanket. I showed it to Bryony and she really liked it. So I said, oh, well, you can have it if you want it. You can take it to uni with you. But I'll probably keep it here for a while, just in case I want to make another at some point and try and resolve those issues.
Now,
But
speaking of blanket knitting fun.
Yes. Oh, yes.
We are, of course, partway through this year's... Well, it's not even this year's, because the summer stitching lasts for 3 months. We're coming up to the end of month number 1. And through month number 1, everyone has been knitting the 100-acre blanket.
It is this one.
And let's have a look at the latest instalment of the series.
Welcome back, everybody, to the summer of stitching. So we're on part 4 already, aren't we? It's just going by so quickly. But what we're going to do today, what you will see in the videos, there's actually only one video today, and what it shows you is the final square of strip 3, which technically is also the final square of the blanket. Shall we find my very final square? Would that be fun? This one up here, yeah, I had a feeling it was this colour. This beautiful emerald green is the last square on my blanket. I dyed this yarn quite recently, actually. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. So it's time now, of course, to go and have a look at that video. You can read the pattern and just see exactly how to work that final square. Okay, so here we go with the final square on strip 3. So because we haven't got that other square up here, we just need to pick up our first stitch along the cast on edge here of this, what is my yellow square. Okay, so that's 2. And we're away. 3. So as previous, we're now going to turn. So there we go, that's the final square on strip 3. So I will see you back soon, everybody, for more of our beautiful 100-acre blanket.
Oh, yes. My goodness, people have been addicted to this.
Really have. It's been so interesting. And what's been...
Shouldn't say past tense, are addicted to this.
Addicted to it. And what's been so interesting is there's so many people who have never knitted a mighty square blanket.
I know.
I'm just amazed.
It's so cool.
Yeah, so I'm so pleased I went with this idea.
And the amount of... I mean, you've literally gone through... I've never known Kate go through so many different sort of, right, how could we do this? Right, I'll try that. No. We'll do it like this. And you've like perfected every element of it. And it's been wonderful then to see how much people are appreciating it. Because you do go down every avenue. And the reason why you design it the way you design it is always for specific reasons. And so it's just great that people are so addicted.
It's so lovely. A lot of people have been worried about colour placement.
Yeah.
But I've just said, look, just do every colour you've got, you know. As long as you don't put 2 very similar colours side by side, you're fine. Just throw everything into it, because the more colours you put in, the better it will look.
And the final part in this series, this first series, 3 series in Summer Stitching, final part goes out on Tuesday the 24th of June.
Yes, and that final part shows all the sort of weaving in of ends. I know some people have had to wait, because I'll be honest, people have like knit it way quicker than I anticipated as well. So people are like way ahead of the point that I thought they would be by the time that weaving in ends video came out. So some people have had to sort of wait a little bit to find out how I weave in ends. So I know that they might have like a number of ends to weave in all at once, but it just makes most sense in terms of filming the whole thing and how the pattern is laid out for anyone who's knitting it after then, when they're just referring to the pattern, that all of the weaving in end videos, because there's various different places to weave in ends and they're all just slightly different, so it's easier just to have them all in one place. So
yeah, I mean, we think long and hard about every series we do, and one of the most important things when you're putting out a series is that you don't overload people with information. And we've put out a huge amount of content this month, because normally we would put out within a week maybe a tutorial on Tuesday and a review on a Thursday maybe, or a magazine, or who knows. And you've actually put out 9 tutorials in the space of 5 slots. So it was really important that we got them in the right order. I think you definitely have, because it just would have been too confusing if you'd been
I wanted to keep it simple and logical and in that kind of process order. And so far it's just been brilliant.
And like we mentioned earlier on, when you finish knitting the blanket,
yes,
you could then go knit the beachcomber socks from 2023.
Oh gosh, you could.
Or you could go knit the Jane's mitts from 2024.
Yeah.
So the summer of stitching fun can continue on for as long as you like.
Absolutely. Yes.
And speaking of fun, it's time. Oh yes, for the final part. Oh, parting is such sweet sorrow.
Well, it's not in this case, because you find something out exciting.
That's why it's sweet, baby. Yes, it's time for the final part of Britain, the Stately Era. What a journey we've been on over 5 episodes, visited some spectacular properties. It's now time to revisit them all, see how it all comes together, see the return of the king, and then find out what happens next.
Welcome back to York and the final part of our story. General George Monk and his wife Anne, they're risking it all to rid England of military rule. Now, sort of contradictory that they're using a massive army, they're using the military to do this, but they've made it all the way to London from Scotland and not a shot has been fired. But now as George approaches the gates of London, what will happen next?
As George approached the gates of London, they opened before him just like they had done at York. Thomas Fairfax, George and Anne Monk had trodden an amazing high-wire act of military and political negotiations, and now the future lay in their hands alone. The sitting Parliament agreed to dissolve themselves so new democratically elected MPs could take their seats. As the new House took shape, the first item on the agenda was who would lead them. The country wanted a return to the monarchy, with George Monk as king, but he immediately refused. In close discussions with his wife, Monk agreed to take a meeting with an agent of Charles Stuart, son of the executed king. By the time the meeting ended, Monk was a passionate supporter of Charles. George Monk laid out the terms for the restoration of the monarchy. There would be no repercussions on the men who had led the revolution. Charles would accept whatever Parliament offered in relation to royal land, and the army must be paid in full. Charles accepted, and in April 1660, heralds declared the 29-year-old King Charles. He was the most potent, mighty, and undoubted King of England. One week later, a delegation arrived in Holland to accompany the king home. At its head rode Thomas Fairfax. The man who had brought down the father would now see the son return to power. Charles II was rowed ashore at Dover on the 26th of May 1660 to a welcoming party of thousands. As the king disembarked, cries rang out of "God save the king." George Monk was first to greet him, and as he walked forward, the king's brother exclaimed, "God bless George Monk," throwing his hat in the air as he did so. While she's not mentioned much at all in the recorded histories, all knew Anne Monk had played a huge part in returning the monarchy to England. King Charles II wrote to her many times over the coming months and years.
And with that, the stately era was officially born in Britain. It was a new start for the monarchy too. Much of their powers had now passed to the Parliament, and whilst they hadn't lost all of them, this was very much the start of the Britain that I know today. But with the return of the king and the return of a strong and stable government, the middle classes would now drive an architectural revolution that would transform the face of the country.
The Civil War brought an end to the castles of Britain, and now the return of the monarchy saw the power of the country shift to the stately home completely. Many lords and ladies had left for the continent during the time of the Republic. Now, as they returned to Britain, they brought with them the fashions from the continent. The architecture of the Roman Republic became extremely fashionable. Porticos appeared on the front of houses all across the country. Privacy was becoming paramount too, and where once a great hall would have been the focal point of all activity, now private dining rooms became a must. Whilst once the family would have eaten with their household, now they would eat alone, apart from on special occasions. This spectacular dining room at Howard House, whilst original, was completely redeveloped by the architect of the Houses of Parliament in the Victorian era. What an outstanding job he did.
As the monarchy was restored, the gardens that we know today really started to appear. Dutch engineers, who had plied their trade draining the alluvial plains of their homeland, were imported to create ponds and lakes and water features and so much more.
In some gardens, underground water spouts would create artificial rain or empower statues to weep. Water also operated instruments which made a melody of nightingales, according to travel writer Celia Fiennes. It is to this amazing woman that so much of our knowledge of this period comes. From 1684 to 1703, she travelled from Newcastle to Cornwall on horseback, and this was a time when travelling for leisure by anyone was unheard of. She visited most of the great country houses of England as they were being built, and she wrote a memoir of her travels. It was intended for family use, that is, until it was published in 1947. This was also the moment the library became extremely fashionable. The earliest collections of books, would you believe, were often stored in the lavatory. That's why many of the earliest libraries can be found next door to them to this day. As the 18th century dawned, books became cheaper, which allowed most houses to develop vast libraries. This elevated them into one of the most important rooms in the house. They were used for greeting guests, letter writing, playing cards, and of course reading.
me, I think the most spectacular thing about the evolution of the English stately home is the impact it has on modern day city streets. Because everywhere you look, as you walk down a street in Britain, you see nods to the Baroque, Palladian, Georgian and more. And what's all the more staggering is that the start was really quite rustic.
The medieval feasting hall which we saw here at Barley Hall in episode 1, inspired by the Viking longhouses of the 9th century, over generations joined itself to the lifestyle of the Roman villa from centuries before to become this breathtaking Great Hall which we saw at Benningborough when we visited in episode 2. The steady drive for privacy brought bedrooms, drawing rooms, dining rooms, and so much more.
And it all culminated with the construction of stately homes like Castle Howard, Chatsworth, Blenheim, and of course, Harewood House. I think what makes this period of history so tantalising is that whilst we might not live in a house that's quite as grand as Harewood, still the rooms that we saw in Harewood and in all the houses that we visited this series, like dining rooms and drawing rooms, maybe if you're lucky, maybe libraries, you know, there's a chance that you're going to find these rooms in a modern house that you would find today. And that's what I think makes this such an amazing story to tell. And what I love so much is all of this happened because of places like this.
We're walking through the ruins of St Mary's Abbey in York, and it was the closing of these places all across the country by Henry VIII that saw the first stately homes of Britain appear. The religious uncertainty that followed led in time to the Civil War and Oliver Cromwell's protectorate. This brought the curtain down on the age of the castles. But in their place rose architecture which inspires and fascinates to this day. What I didn't realise when I started this journey was how personal it was to me.
We're back at St James's Church in Bilborough, and we first visited here in episode 1, and you may recall that I grew up about a mile in that direction, and then the designer of Harewood House and of Fairfax House, John Carr, he retired to Askham Hall, which is about half a mile in that direction. I actually used to walk my family dog over his land, didn't even realise it at the time. I doubt many people do. But the most wonderful connection of all is, of course, to Thomas Fairfax, who's buried right here, and his wife Anne is just behind him, just over there. He brought about the downfall of a king. He defeated the king's army in the Civil War, but then he realised his mistake and he ushered in the return of his son, King Charles II. Who do we have to thank for Britain's stately era? It is without doubt Thomas Fairfax.
But as one door closes, another one swings open because
Throughout this series, one name has kept coming up, and that was the Vikings.
longhouses like they built here at King's Square in York inspired medieval halls like Barley Hall. Homes like this then inspired all that we've seen this series. So who were these mysterious warriors from across the North Sea?
From 1976 till 1981, many of their secrets were discovered in a world-famous archaeological dig that took place right down here.
Today, those stories are shared in vivid detail at the Jorvik Viking Centre in York. Because before they inspired their stately home, they conquered much of Great Britain. They gave this city its name, and they drove the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms that existed before the birth of England to the brink of destruction. Their mere presence turned those 7 separate kingdoms into one, which gave birth to the country that I now call home.
This is the story of the forging of England, the birth of York. It was the seed that would become the English stately home. And whilst the Vikings play a key part in this story, there is oh so much more to tell. To do this story justice, we have come to the beautiful island of Lindisfarne. So join me this summer as we tell the story of Holy Island. My goodness, what a perfect spot you found.
I know, isn't it beautiful?
Where are we?
Oh my goodness! You can't beat a bit of Viking action. Oh no! And there is no better place to go and explore the story of the Vikings than Lindisfarne.
Lindisfarne.
Or Holy Island,
Yeah.
as it's also known.
Yeah.
We will be discovering why later on in the series. What a place! I mean, like a desert island.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a individual place. I mean, if you've never heard of it and you want to know where it is, if you look at a map of England, if you find Berwick upon Tweed, which is up in the north, on the northeast coast, almost into Scotland, and then if you look to the right of that, just off the coast, that's where it is. Yeah.
Kay's so sweet. She speaks in the days of maps when people got maps out. Of course, when
Would you
everyone
not get a map?
No, darling, they will just go on Google Maps, type in Lindisfarne, and be there in 2 seconds.
I have a map book. It's one of my favourite things to look through. I've got an atlas map book.
All credit
thing.
to all of you who still do use maps.
I love it.
Yes. I remember the days when you were travelling around the country and you would get the map out.
Yeah,
and you'd be
yeah.
looking on the junctions.
Yeah.
Also, as well, it was always easier to get to places.
Everybody had
'cause
those
you'd planned it
giant
out.
map books in their car, didn't they?
How many junctions? Right and then left. Oh, boom, I'm there. Now
Yeah.
it's like totally dependent on a machine saying.
Didn't need an
"Turn
internet
left
signal,
now."
did you, to open a book?
But look,
But yes, you've all just Googled it. Just Google Earth it. Google
next
Earth it,
time,
everyone. Oh, I love to Google Earth.
next time we will be beginning our story of Holy Island. Over 5 episodes, we're going to chart the story of the whole place. So it's not just the Vikings. It's because there's so much history. It's just, it would be wrong not to try and tell the whole story. So that's what we're going to do. Bringing it right up to date. Some really sort of cool places we're going to visit, and it's just going to be the business. Did you hear that music? Just spectacular. And that's just like the tiniest little hint.
Is.
There's 21 minutes of new music in this series. We're going to be using music in a very different way to what we've used it before. In fact, a lot of the production is completely brand new, including the opening, which, well, you'll see that. Well, now, speaking of the opening, if you're excited by what you've just seen, do not miss our Patreon exclusive show, which is coming up on Sunday. It's early this month, so it's coming up on Sunday. It will be at 2 p.m. British Summer Time live, or of course you could watch any time you like after 3:10. And the reason why I say if you're excited, don't miss it, because we're going to be sharing the first 5 minutes of episode 1. So exclusive first footage. Don't miss that Patreon exclusive show coming up on Sunday. So, of course, though, Britain the Stately era as well.
Yeah.
All finished. I mean, I loved.
Oh, it was wonderful.
It's just been so much fun producing that series, delving into a period of history that I didn't know a lot about, and seeing the connections to York and the connections to where I grew up, just perfect. So, what a wonderful series! But now it's all about the Holy Island. Oh yes, and it all begins next time.
It does.
Now it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
So, hey, look, as mentioned, the Patreon exclusive show is coming up on Sunday, the 22nd of June, so don't miss that. Full details on how to watch are in the show notes below. Our radio show is back next week. Put out an episode last week, and that was really fun. That was.
It was.
What was the episode about?
The audiobooks.
That's it.
It was Dan's experience of audiobooks.
Too much has happened.
Yeah.
First ever audiobook experience. So we're talking about audiobooks and also giving you a review of Winter Solstice. So if you're feeling warm and you want to cool down, then go and have a listen to Winter. Maybe get in a cool bath and have a listen to us talking about Winter Solstice. We shall cool the cockles of your heart. Next time we're back, we're going to be talking all about our trips to Holy Island. Yeah. So that's going to be really fun. Also as well, Jen, our Knitability editor, she's just put out her latest review. Let's take a quick look.
Hey patrons, how are you doing? I'm doing well. I am back with another yarn review, this time for June, and taking a look at this beautiful yarn from Emma's Yarn. So the yarn that I used is this beautiful Emma's Yarn, crazy beautiful color on her beautifully basic base. And I picked this up at local yarn store day at my local yarn shop, Conversational Threads. So the one thing that I will say I was concerned about is the fact that it is such a deep red. And historically, when I've worked with a very deep red or a bright pink or just something where it's really saturated, the color has bled. And I was like, as soon as I start sweating, just everything about me is gonna look like a big bloody mess. But it was totally fine. I'm really happy with its longevity and the way that it's stuck. Thanks again for joining me for another yarn review. I would love to know if you have ventured into tank top knitting. I guess in British terms it would be a vest. We call them tanks here in the States.
Oh yes, Jen does a review for us every month, and it's just so wonderful having another person's eyes.
Yeah,
on
absolutely. It's fantastic because Jen also has access to a lot more yarns than we would here in the UK. So that's just brilliant. Yeah.
Yes, so Jen's review is available to watch right now. And yeah, as we mentioned, summer stitching in full bloom right now, so come and join in.
Yeah.
And final part in the blanket is out on Tuesday the 24th, and then next month we'll be getting into the bag making.
We are.
Oh yes. So
Yeah.
it's getting very exciting.
Yeah.
So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. It's been wonderful to see
Wow.
you. What an exciting episode.
Yes.
Most adventurous series we've ever produced starts next episode, the
So
4th of July.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Hey, that's fun.
It's very fun.
All the people in the US will be like having a bit of a holiday, so
We shall
you can
have
sit down and
fireworks.
watch it.
Yes.
How cool is that? I didn't realise that.
So yes, thank you so much for watching.
Thank
and
you,
we'll See
everybody.
you in 2 weeks with the very first episode of
Yay.
the Story of Holy
See you
Island.
soon.
Bye.
What shot number is it?
This is episode 5. Can you believe it? Episode 5, shot 21.
Boom. Boom, boom, shaka-laka, laka, boom. What's that song?
Was I in the picture at all times? Yeah. And it all looked good? Great. Okay.
I wish we were at the autumn solstice.
No, it's the autumn equinox.
Yes, I know.
darling.
I was being funny.
I wish we were.
For almost a decade now, Thomas had lived in retirement about a mile from here. For almost a decade now, Thomas Fairfax had lived in retirement about a mile from here.
I'm going to sneeze. I can't do it.
Beautiful, beautiful.